Well, hello and welcome to the Edgewood 4G podcast. My name is Kyle and I'm the discipleship pastor here at Edgewood. And here we gather, grow, give, and go with the gospel to our neighbors and the nations. Today, I'm thrilled to have my good friend Dan Lloyd with us. How are you doing, Dan?
Good. Really good.
Thanks, man, for coming on today.
No problem.
I appreciate you being here. So Dan is the director of swimming and diving at Augie. And you've been there for how many years now?
This is 11 years.
Wow. Okay. 11 years.
Yeah.
Very good. Dan's a member of our church. He's been coaching there for a while now. Just a few things, and this is pretty awesome, but Dan has 6 CCIW conference titles in the last 4 years with Augie. And you've won this with the men's and the women's programs there.
Yep.
And so it's just been awesome just to see how that program has grown. You have so many swimmers now. I mean, how many?
Yeah, we're up to 60 swimmers and divers.
Wow, yeah. So that program has really changed around under Dan's leadership. So it's just really cool to see just how God's used him there as a coach, but then also just living out your Christian faith as a coach and as a teacher. And so we're thrilled to have Dan. And Dan, why don't you just start off by sharing your story and coming to faith, but then also, how do you get connected to swimming and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my story and what God's doing here at Augustana. I started competitive swimming when I was 4 years old. My brother, who was 6 years older than me, also swam. And my parents, I grew up in the church, was just definitely raised in the church. A thing that I saw through my swimming career that really impacted me was my brother, his senior year in high school, missed making state by 1/100th of a second. Oh, wow. So in the state of Illinois, when you go to sectionals, you either have to make the cut or win, and you have to do it that day.
Wow.
And so he trained for 4 years. That's all he wanted to do, and touched the wall, and he missed it by 1/100th of a second. And that really impacted my life, but I saw how it impacted his in terms of the fact that he grew deeper in his faith. He really saw that the adversity that he faced through that impacted him. And that really, I carried that with me a lot through my swimming career. Swimming's a really hard sport. We wake up very early in the morning. Yep. We typically practice in college. I was practicing about 4.5 hours a day. So I was going from like 5 to 7:30 in the morning, going to class all day, and then coming back and practicing again at night, putting in a lot of hours. I was a miler, so that's 66 laps.
I can't even imagine.
So swam a lot, and they actually, at the end of my career, somebody figured up all the mileage that I swam, and it was basis that you could swim from New York to LA and back and do it like 4 times.
Stop it. Oh, my word.
So there's a lot of staring at the black line on that bottom of the pool, a lot of time to pray and to think, and there was a lot of prayer through a lot of those sets.
I bet.
But the turning point in my life was, and it's impacted me to this day, is my parents signed me up to go to the Athletes in Action swim camp at Wheaton College.
Okay.
And that spring we went up there to see Wheaton before the camp. And the coach at Wheaton College was actually in his office, and he pulled us in. His name's John Lederhouse, and he met with us for like 20 minutes.
Okay.
And I never knew how that was going to impact my life. This story is just incredible in terms of how God places people in your life and how those people come back to fruition and how that all impacts. But there was a guy who was supposed to be at that camp named Josh Davis, and Josh Davis would go on in 1996 to win 3 gold medals at the Atlanta Olympics in swimming.
Okay.
He was very outspoken about his faith, and I was so excited to meet him. And I get to the camp, and I call home, and I'm like, Josh Davis isn't here.
Oh, no.
Like, he's not there. And the director of the camp, Craig Harriman, and then Rob Odell were 2 guys that really poured into me.
Okay.
And it was on July 6, 1994, in a dorm room, in a dorm lounge at Wheaton College, that I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Praise God.
It all came together, that God had given me this gift. I could use it for his glory. I'm going to face adversity, but everything came together. And Rob and Craig Harriman just definitely poured into me. Now, fast forward to 2006, I am coaching at University of Michigan, and one day, Josh Davis walks on the deck.
Oh, nice.
And Josh Davis is there to speak at an Athletes in Action event that night. And we spent the whole day together, and I tell him the story, And I told him, I said, the sad part is there's no Christian swim camps anymore. They don't exist.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, he is contacted by Johnny Polk, who runs T-Bar M down in San Antonio. It's a Christian camp.
Okay.
And he says, we want to start a Christian swim camp.
Wow.
And Josh calls me, and in 2006, we started the first Christian swim camp in the nation. We had no pool. There were some pools in the area that we used.
Yeah. And
it's just been incredible to see God bring kids from all over the nation that come to this camp. We now have a pool on site. God has just blessed us in so many ways. And we've impacted we still do it to this day. Craig Harriman is still a great mentor and friend to me. I went on later in my career to work at Wheaton College and mentor under John Lederhouse. And it's just been incredible. I'm a very blessed man to have such godly leaders in my life.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's amazing. And just to see how God has weaved your story, given you a love for swimming, but then saved you kind of through that at a Christian college, and now seeing you in your position, seeking to live out your faith as a coach, as a leader, as a teacher there. So share with us a little bit more about that, Dan, how you came to get this position at Augie.
Yeah.
But then what does that look like? What do you do? And I guess you said you've been there 11 years now.
11 years. Yeah. God just kind of orchestrated this to open. And literally, I was just going through a lot of things at that time in my life, and I needed a position to open back here in Central Illinois. And it opened. And it was incredible because in 2000, Augustana made their head coaching position part-time. Okay. It wasn't until they opened it with this coaching change that they made it full time.
Gotcha.
And when I came to interview, I'll never forget, the pool was built in 1960 at the time. It had 6 lanes. It was falling apart. It was a dungeon is what we called it.
Yeah, I've been in there.
No windows, very dark. And I was told in my interview by people that I met with on campus, they said, you're never getting a new pool here, and you're never going to win here. I mean, it's going to be really impossible to win. And I just really felt, I went to prayer, and I talked to my mentors, and they're just like, God's leading you here. Like, you need to take this position. And I really felt, I was like, God, I'm ready to walk through that door. I know it's not going to be easy, but I know that you have great things planned for us here. And it was hard. In the first year, the pump of the pool went out the week of homecoming, and we had a big alumni meet set.
Oh, my word.
And we had to practice at Rock Island High School, and our practice time was 5 a.m. And I was just like, I don't know how this is going to work.
This isn't sustainable.
This is not sustainable.
Right.
Because here's the deal. Like, if you coach soccer, you can have a field. Like, as long as you got grass, you can go. Our options were either this or the Mississippi River at this point, right?
You don't want that.
You got to have water.
Yeah.
So I kind of started making it my mission to connect with people on campus, to really, and I give a lot of credit to President Balls. President Balls really believed in the vision that I set out for the program.
Yeah.
I had what we called our commitment to excellence when we recruited kids, which was we care about them first as people, then as students, and then as an athlete.
That's awesome.
And we care a lot about their legacy and the legacy they're going to leave. But our number one team goal was academic excellence, because that's what's going to transform them in terms of being able to be successful in their major when they leave.
Yeah.
And he believed in that vision, and I really give him a lot of credit because he believed in me. And God, I just kept praying, like, God, like, how can we make this happen? And God brought the right people in. And what I tell people all the time is, when you meet somebody, never burn a bridge. My parents told me that growing up. You never know where that's going to lead. Yeah. Our first major donor was someone who was not even connected with Augustana. And that made a huge impact. The incredible piece was they then agreed, we're going to build this pool, which was unheard of. And the crazy part is, if you've been to Augustana's campus, we're completely landlocked. I mean, we are landlocked. And I remember sitting in a meeting, and somebody said, well, if you think a pool can be built here, where are you going to put it?
Yeah.
And so my athletic director, Mike Sapolsky, I got to give him a lot of credit as well. He really believed in this vision, and he saw it. And he goes, let's get a tape measure. Let's get a track wheel. And we actually went out to this hill that was right next to the pool, the old pool, and we measured it out. And he's like, that's where it's going to go. And I saw the vision of the fact that we were very blessed because that hill caused us to spend a lot less money on building it because of the fact that we would put the deep end on the bottom of the hill. So you wouldn't have to dig in as much.
Okay.
And so, and the other cool part about how your life comes full circle, my parents gave me a book when I was a little kid. It was called Competitive Swimming by Doc Councilman, who was kind of the godfather of swimming. Mm-hmm. And in that was a whole chapters on pool design. And I was just fascinated by it. Yeah. And when I worked for John Leaderhouse at Wheaton, we'd always go to pools and John would say, they should have done that differently, or they should do this differently. And so I was able to partner with John. John was brought in as a consultant. Nice. We were able to work on it together. The amazing part is, and this came up as a memory the other day, they cleared the hill, they fenced it off one day before COVID. Oh, if it would have been one day later, I cannot say we'd be in that building right now.
Yeah.
So it was incredible, the fact that that was all cleared, because at that point, I mean, colleges across the nation were, I don't want to take on more money. Like, how does this all work? And so we were just very, very blessed with just how God orchestrated it all. There was lots of challenges in terms of building it, and God sustained me through that. I give a lot of credit to Pastor Brian here at Edgewood, because I met with Brian many times in terms of the fact that I wanted his guidance in terms of the fact that he had gone through this whole process here at Edgewood with
building project.
And you commiserate on some of the things that, like, how do you handle this? And so I really just appreciate Pastor Brian's guidance and leadership in that.
So what year was it completed when y'all were in there?
So it took about 2.5 years. We've been in there now for 4 years, I think it's been, or where are we off to now?
We're 2025.
Yeah.
So when done? 22?
Yeah, I think it was 22.
Okay.
It was the first year it was open.
Okay, gotcha.
And so it's been incredible because one piece of it that was very important to me is mental health is extremely important to me.
Yep.
That's part of my journey. I swam for 18 years of my life. And what I tell people about swimming is swimming becomes kind of your best friend. And it's a great release in terms of the fact that, one, you're exercising, but two, like, you're releasing the endorphins. It's healthy medication. When I graduated from college, I went immediately to work on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And you want to talk about a complete shift in life. Like, I'm not practicing anymore. Now I'm doing the daily grind. But I started seeing the signs of depression at that point. And I really have taken that as, at the time, I was really troubled by it because of the fact that I felt there was stigma around it.
For sure.
I was really helped by a lot of people in my life to kind of get through that and overcome that. But I knew that God had a bigger purpose in that, in the fact that he was going to use that later on. And that was really that's why I love the fact that I am in coaching. I tell people all the time with coaching, don't get into coaching if you think that you're going to stand on a deck or a field and you're just going to coach that. At the college level, now since COVID, 75% of my job is being a counselor.
Wow.
And
I believe it.
And so that was the biggest thing to me when we built the pool. Was pools in the 70s and 80s were built as dungeons. They had no windows. So if you walk into our pool now, you'll see the first window is this huge wall is a window, and then there's windows everywhere. And it's made a huge difference for our team, because if you think about it, our sport it's 19 weeks, but it covers all the seasons. The winter months are really tough. So if you're coming to practice in the morning and it's dark out, and you're leaving practice tonight and it's dark out, you're never seeing the light of day.
Yeah.
So having those windows has been huge in terms of just boosting our morale, just helping our kids who struggle with seasonal depression.
Yep.
And it's made a huge impact.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to go over there and check it out. It's a breathtaking facility. The windows are amazing. I was able to visit you while you were building it. I've been there several times, and then I was able to come to your last home meet.
Yep.
And it was just awesome. It was just so cool to be
And I would just say, like, I appreciate the fact that those people, that President Balls, Mike Sapolsky, they entrusted me to design it and be a part of that. So many times facilities you can walk into them and see that the coach had nothing to do with it. And I'm just very grateful and honored and blessed that they allowed me to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Dan, share with us a little bit about your Christian faith, how you live that out on campus as a coach, and especially you say at this time of life and now how things have changed where there's a lot of this depression, anxiety going on among college students. How do you counsel? How do you live out your faith there?
I mean, the biggest thing that I knew when I came to Augustana is that we had to build a family and we had to build off of a foundation.
Yeah.
And realistically, the biggest thing that I was really blessed was Augustana allowed us to recruit on a national base.
Wow.
I was able to go out to people's homes. We do not offer athletic scholarship at all because we're a Division III school. So you really have to go sell the program, and you have to, and realistically, I tell people all the time, when you go to do this, for most people, this is the biggest probably decision they will make in their life. You're trusting sometimes their firstborn or second to go to the school for a cost now where colleges are at. It's more expensive than purchasing a home, and so it's a huge investment. It's an investment in their life. The thing that I always did was I always said, before I go in and meet with somebody, I'm going to pray about it because I have no idea how this meeting is going to impact their life. They may never come here, but this may be the only time that they see a different perspective.
Oh, that's so good.
I think the biggest thing is I am not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. I'm not that type of coach. The coach I am is I learned a lot from John Learhouse. Is I try to approach with a gentle spirit to show the love of Christ in the way I act and the way I present things, the way I talk to people. It's a partnership. And the biggest thing, the kids that have success in our program and our reason our program has success is because we treat it like a partnership. We want them to take the reins. I remember back to when I went to college and my parents said to me when they left me off, "It's all yours now. We've given you all the tools. It's up to you now to decide how you're going to go." What we talk about in the recruiting process is we want to be that parent away from home who's there ready to take the reins and to be with them. And so in my office, there's lots of things that I have around in my office, but one of the things I keep right now next to it is Ray Pritchard's "Keep Calm, Jesus in the Boat." And that's right next to when I meet with recruits or I meet with somebody in my office, I give these to my kids. I appreciate Ray and everything he does. I keep this in my pocket every time we go to a meet. And this year when we faced some adversity at our conference championship, actually went up to the swimmer that was facing the adversity and I handed it to him.
That's awesome.
And I said, "I want you to read this." And then it was interesting. One of our other swimmers was standing there and he did not have a great prelim swim the next day. And he goes, "Coach, I need that card. Can you give me that card? I need to read that. I need to refocus." And so I think cool. it's more about the fact that one of the coolest things to see how God has worked here is during the construction process at Edgewood, we had that wall. And that wall, you wrote who you want to pray for. And I wrote on that wall, I said, Augustana campus and Augustana swim and dive. And I've just seen a lot of kids come to Edgewood and explore it. And that's not through me. That's all through God. That's all through what He's been able to do. I think it's amazing that we are so close to the college and the proximity. I'd love to see just the Lord be on fire in that campus. And it just takes one person. It takes one person to have that spark and just keep going. And I'm very proud of the fact that our kids have just really gravitated towards coming to explore Edgewood and seeing what it's about. And we're so blessed to have Edgewood be a Bible preaching and solid in the Word, and because there is so much out there right now that these kids are facing that is not truth. Having that close proximity to Augie, just a mile down the road, and the fact that we have quite a few students coming to our young adults ministry,
having you there on campus. We support InterVarsity at Augustana. We've been doing that for years. We try to find ways to get involved. Hopefully in the future we'll find more ways. But yeah, what do you see God doing there? How is God moving? It might be in small, subtle ways, just in this day and age. But like, what do you see God doing there, Dan?
I see a lot of things in terms of the fact that I think that kids are really questioning who they are and what they're about.
Yeah.
If you look at athletics in general, the NC2A is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
The NC2A is not structured in a great way right now. It's all about money.
Yep.
Kids have the ability. They have now the transfer portal. And for those of you who don't know what the transfer portal is, it used to be that if you wanted to transfer somewhere, you'd have to sit out a year or you couldn't. It deterred people from transferring.
Gotcha.
Now it is, if I'm not happy, I jump in the transfer portal, I threaten to the team or the coach and say, I'm leaving, and they can go wherever they want. And the one thing I share with kids in the process of recruiting when I meet with parents is there is no perfect place. Like there's going to be challenges. There's going to be something that's going to happen. Yep. That's just life. Unfortunately, the view of life for a lot of these kids is just skewed now.
Yep.
Based upon what we see on social media and perception. And I think the biggest thing that I've tried to share with the kids that come into me that face problems is I try to turn it to my faith and share that in terms of the fact that some of the challenges that I've been through and how God's orchestrated, the things that I've been through that
Yep.
I don't see for 10 years later or 12 years later.
Right.
But that's the hope that I hope to give them through that. And I try to share with them, I went through it. I know at the time I thought it was terrible and I didn't want to go through it. But a quote that I really hold true. So when I went through depression, I really studied about other people who faced depression.
Yeah.
Charles Spurgeon's story is just incredible. Charles Spurgeon went through massive depression when he was in his 20s. He was preaching, and they moved the venue to, it was like a concert hall or something like that.
Okay.
There was over 10,000 people there, and somebody yelled fire while he was speaking. And through the trampling, tons of people were killed, hurt.
Wow.
And they say that Spurgeon, it wrecked him. It put him into a deep depression. A quote that he had said, which I really hold true, and I wrote this out to share with you, is, "Glory be to God for the furnace, the hammer, and the file. Heaven shall be all the fuller of bliss, because we have been filled with the anguish here below, and the earth shall be better tilled because of our training in the school of adversity."
Wow.
And I think that's really important to think about, because of the fact that I think nowadays people think adversity and they think, it's all black and white. There's no gray area in there. It's this has happened. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And we see that. The biggest thing that I try to remember every day, because I live close to the church, is I usually get into work. I usually leave for work about 4:30 in the morning. And when I drive by the church, I remember I am entering the mission field right now. Like, this is the mission field that I am entering.
Yeah.
God, I don't know what you have planned for me today. I know that there could be a list of 10 or a list of 1. That one person I'm about ready to meet with, how do you want me to impact their life for later for your good? So.
Wow, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, man. Hey, any stories that you can share just about your time at Augie, how God has used you or used students in the program, or things that you've seen God do there? Yeah, share with us if you have something.
I think the incredible part is there's been a lot of kids who I've met with who have looked at Christian colleges, and you're talking like a Wheaton or a place where they would require chapel every week, and they've been really focused on the fact that I don't know if I would consider Augustana. I don't know if this is where I should be. And it's been incredible to see God work in that process to bring them here, because of the fact that they see in the end that maybe I don't need to go to a comfortable bubble where I'm going to be just surrounded. And there's, hear me out. There's nothing wrong with a school like that.
Right.
I'm not saying that, but it's been incredible to see kids step out of their faith and say, I am ready to defend who I am. I am ready to be for that next step when I graduate, to walk into the world and be prepared for that. And I've been very blessed with some kids who have come to our program who probably in a million years never thought they'd be here.
Right.
And the way that they have impacted and shaped the culture of our program. And I believe in a family feel, and the adversity that we faced a lot of adversity at this year's championship. And the one thing that I said was so powerful was we all stood together, we moved past it, and we didn't dwell on it. We understood that it was a part of life and that there is no perfection in this journey. But God had a perfect plan. And I think the number of kids that have come in, I mean, countless kids who have come in, especially since COVID, struggling with mental health. There have been some really tough cases, and just being able to understand and empathize with them and not just see them as athletes. I think that is the biggest challenge that we see in sports right now, is that coaches, and it breaks my heart when coaches put so much pressure on kids just to be an athlete and to be great at that athlete. If the person is not whole and the person is not healthy, it doesn't matter what they're going to do in the athletic competition. And as I always say to our kids, last year the best one was it came down to, for the guys to win the championship, the last relay. We were behind. They had to win the B and the A, and there was guys on our team freaking out about it. There was people freaking out about it, and I pulled this card out.
There it is.
And I said, you know what? This is fleeting. This is fleeting. Whatever that time is on that board does not matter. It's the journey that we've been through together. Tomorrow, we're still going to wake up. There's going to be air in our lungs. We're still going to be. You can't lose. You can't lose in this. And I was just so proud of our kids for taking a different perspective with it. And you could see the other teams tensed up, and it really affected them. And we ended up winning. We ended up winning both in dramatic fashion. But I felt it was because of the fact that we went into it with a different perspective, and that it's not an end-all do-all, and this is not the end-all do-all with the whole situation. One of my proudest moments as a coach comes from a story of a guy who actually walked on our deck. He actually came out for our program. He walked on our deck with board shorts on. He had no goggles during our captain's practices, and he came up to me and he goes, "Coach, I want to be a part of this team." And I said, "I would love for you to be a part of this team." And he's like, "Well, nobody else would give me a chance." And he went on to be one of the best leaders for our program. He never scored a single point for us in conference, but he was an amazing, incredible leader for our program. And I think that's the thing that I've just tried to always do on campus is anybody that I've built a relationship with, they see the love of Christ through my actions, my words, and the way that I work with them. Because of the fact that you have no idea how that impact's going to impact them for the rest of their life. I'm glad you shared that. There's so much pressure today with athletes in high school and college. They all want to be professionals now in their sport or their craft, and so it's just, and what actual percentage become professionals? It's a very small percentage. And so I love that you're so focused on kind of that holistic approach of their education, their well-being, their spiritual, their mental health, all of that. It all goes into that. So I think that's great that you're focused on that. And I think the other thing is I've shared with other coaches who are Christian, like, this is your mission field. You can say that, but do you live it out? And do you live it out? And are you taking care of your spiritual well-being and health? Like, God knew when I came here. It was incredible. When I first came here, I didn't know anybody. And my mom actually knew somebody who was from Pontiac. And said, well, Dan's moving to the Quad Cities. And they said, well, you should check out our old pastor who's now at Edgewood, Brian Bill. So we contacted. And the first person, I'll never forget this, when I moved in my apartment, we pull in, and there's Brian Bill with a bunch of Edgewood guys ready to move me in. Wow. And I have just been so blessed by Edgewood and by just the relationship I have with each of you. The pastors have been amazing. Pastor Tim has been incredible. we need to put on the armor. You can't do that without the relationship and the support of the journey. And I would not be where I am and the program be where it is without Edgewood.
Wow.
So
thanks for sharing that, man. That's great. I know you were impacted last fall by the conference with Christopher Yu on holy sexuality. Just share with us briefly a little bit about that and why that was so meaningful.
I think at that point, I was exhausted at that point in the season. We had gone through a lot. I can't go into specifics just because of the fact of confidentiality of our students and what they go through. But we had just gone through a lot as a program. And we had this vision, like going into the season. You always had this vision. And I always prepare myself for, like, it's never going to be exactly how you think it was. But this went off the tracks really pretty hard. And I was putting in long hours. And I came that night and he was there, and I got to talk to him before, and we got to talk for like 15 minutes. And it was interesting to talk to him because of the fact that he had gone to Wheaton College.
Yes.
And so we kind of commiserated on that and how Wheaton had kind of changed and everything. I was just impacted. I mean, tears were rolling down my face as we sat in the service, because I'm like, the work that God did in his life was incredible. Like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it puts your life in perspective, and sometimes you need that. And at that point, I really needed that, because in my opinion, I felt like my head was, and I wrote this to Pastor Brian, my head was barely above water.
Yeah.
For a swim coach.
You're right.
So, but I just really felt like I just couldn't believe the work that he had done in his life. Like, the hope that gives.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad we were able to do that and host that. And I know we had lots of young people, lots of college kids, but it impacted people in every generation.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. Dan, we're going to wrap it up, but I know you have a little bit of history with radio and stuff. So share some of that with us.
I loved radio as a kid. My dad exposed me to it when he would wake me up for morning practice in the morning. For people that that listened to 720, they'll appreciate this. I listened to Bob Collins and Spike O'Dell, and Spike O'Dell's actually from the Quad Cities.
Oh, okay, so people will recognize that name.
But I loved radio. I mean, and I was so obsessed with it. Like, I would create my own radio shows at home, like with tape recorders and have sound bites. And
nice.
I thought that's what I wanted to go into.
Yeah.
I actually was really fortunate to have a radio show in college at a radio station.
Good deal.
So still love it. And I've been connected with some radio personalities that I've done some radio work for them over the past couple of years, just filling in as a person on the show. I love it because for people who at that time, when you're separated from people, it is a calming presence in your life, and they kind of become, especially those morning guys. You felt like they were sitting in your breakfast.
Like you know them.
You know them. But for me, the thing I loved about it the most was it creates imagery in your head of just like. You can do so much with radio and the art of it. Unfortunately, it's kind of gone by the wayside a little bit now with podcasts, because you can see people now.
Here we are on a podcast.
Yeah. But I'll never forget as a kid when we went my parents took me up to Chicago.
Yeah.
And standing in front of the window at WGN and seeing that station, because they used to have the window there in Tribune Tower. It was the window you could go up and watch them on.
Oh, okay.
And I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and just always loved radio. So I've loved the medium. I listen to it all the time. I drive a lot, so I'm still an AM radio guy. I am not a podcast guy. I actually listen to AM radio.
Wow.
So.
Okay. Good little fact there that we know about Dan. And you're well spoken on here, man. So thank you for coming on today. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. How can we pray for you today?
I think just praying to see that how God can continue to work on our campus, continue to see openings, and continue to having those conversations that do not create uncomfortableness. So I think a lot of kids put up walls as soon as you start talking about the Bible and start talking about God. And so seeing more opportunities for God to work in that. I think the other thing is just to see God continue to bring the right people to Augustana for our program. Like I said, I pray about that all the time as we go through the recruiting process, and see lives change. One of the coolest stories I had was when you talk about status, a lot of kids, and like we recruit from California, a lot of these clubs are big, and they get all their kids are going to Division I schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so kids start feeling like, well, if I'm not that, I'm not anything.
Okay.
And no one pays attention to me. And we had a young lady who I'll never forget meeting with her parents, and I knew she would be great for our program and do amazing. And they came to conference. Their parents flew in, and she did incredible. She swam incredible, and her coach was even shocked back at home of how well she swam.
Mm-hmm.
And her dad came up and goes, "Thank you for giving her a chance, because her life has been changed." And she was ready to quit swimming, never swim again, because nobody believed in her.
Oh,
So finding stories like that, finding
That's
kids
great.
like that, I mean, I just pray that God continues to give us the opportunity to connect and to minister to these kids.
Okay.
So,
all right. Let's pray, man.
all right, thanks.
Lord, thanks so much for Dan, and thank you for his heart for you. And just thank you for using him. Lord, thank you for bringing him here 11 years ago. And God, you've used him in a mighty way. You've used him to impact the lives of countless college kids. And Lord, we pray that you continue to be with him, be with the campus at Augie. Lord, I pray that you would bring students to faith there. Lord, I pray that we can impact them through our church here at Edgewood. Pray that they continue to come and be a part of our church family and get connected. And God, I pray that you'd help Dan as they continue to recruit and keep working there, that the right college kids, right students will come there, and Lord, they can be impacted, Lord, through his coaching, through the ministries of InterVarsity, through the ministry of Edgewood. And God, I pray that you would continue to use him and his team to do that. Lord, I pray that you give Dan strength. I know he's a busy guy. I pray that you would just give him the endurance and the bandwidth he needs to continue to coach, to teach, to lead, to minister. God, we ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Thanks, God.
All right, man. Thanks for being on today. And thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Edgewood 4G podcast. If you do us a favor, leave us a rating and review. If you're listening to this through Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google or any of those, helps us to get it out there more so more people can listen. If you're viewing this through video on Facebook or YouTube, again, share that with someone else, especially if this would be of interest to someone to learn a little bit more about swimming at Augie and the fact that we have a really solid Christian coach there. And so thanks again, Dan, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.